Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hi guys. Hello. How are you? Okay, we're doing part 3 of Genghis Khan, Preemptive Like. I'd recommend watching the previous 2 parts, but that is up to you, or ask to copy someone's notes. Original link to the video, top of the description, right below that, link to the Discord, click on it, sends you right over there. I'm stalling so that I can do this. Boom. Oh, wait. Boom. What did I do? Okay. Hi, let's go.
A tragic beginning, a daring escape, and a rise to power. The steppe has come to life with gossip. Could young upstart Temujin be the one to defy custom and unite the Mongol clans under one ruler? Rumors of Temujin's daring escape from Jamaka's band traveled fast across the steppe. Respected prophets and religious leaders began to report that Temujin's ascension to power was destined by the spirits, and Temujin was 100% okay with that. He summoned his followers to participate in a council called a Kurultai, which was essentially an election. Families, lineages, and clans voted by showing up. Their presence served as an endorsement, or their absence as a vote against him. Attracting a simple majority counted as a victory. Unfortunately, the turnout was scarce. The majority of steppe lineages still supported Jamaka.
Oh, right. Okay, I remember where we left off last time. Okay, yeah, him and...
Turnout was scarce. The majority of steppe lineages still supported Jamaka. Temujin could work with this, though. Having now gathered all of his allies in one place, he consolidated this small but loyal group to establish himself as a minor Khan. And thus, Temujin became Temujin Khan. He quickly sent an...
So he lost, and how can he do that?
Envoy to Ong Khan to reassert his loyalty and seek his patron's blessing, reassuring him that this new title was not meant as a challenge. Ong Khan was fine with it. He preferred that Temujin and Jamaka's ambitions stay focused against each other instead of him.
Smart.
With his patron's blessing secured, Temujin built up a revolutionary system of government within his tribe. A Khan's court was known as an ordu, or horde, and traditionally the Khan's horde consisted exclusively of his relatives, and served as a kind of aristocracy over the rest of the tribe. Temujin, however, assigned positions of power based on loyalty and ability, without regard for familial ties. He appointed butchers, cooks, archers, guards, and keepers of prized herds of livestock. Butchers, cooks...
Who's this guy? Why does he have a cheeseburger?
Archers, guards, and keepers of prized herds of livestock and horses. He also created an elite regiment of bodyguards to surround his camp at all times. Jamaka, meanwhile, still refused to acknowledge Temujin as anything other than an insolent upstart who needed to be put in his place. He carefully planned and bided his time, waiting for just the right moment to take Temujin down. That moment finally came a year after Temujin's Kurultai. One of Temujin's followers killed one of Jamaka's distant relatives during a cattle raid, and Jamaka used this as a justification to attack Temujin's camp with his vastly superior army, quickly routing Temujin's forces. Then, to prevent them from regrouping and retaliating, Jamaka perpetrated a horrific show of revenge, beheading one of the captured leaders and boiling 70 captive prisoners alive. Unfortunately for Jamaka, this cruel show...
Is there a worse way to go than that? Buried alive, I suppose. I don't even know.
...of force back prisoners alive.
Hey.
Unfortunately for Jamaka, this cruel show of force backfired hard, horrifying even his staunchest allies. By treating his enemies this way, he further emphasized the divisions between the old aristocratic lineages and the abused lower classes. Temujin may have lost the battle, but this moment was a turning point in terms of public support and sympathy. More families flocked to join Temujin's camp, and he slowly began to rebuild. In 1195, a 33-year-old Temujin would be...
Imagine guys being in a... It doesn't just have to be in a Mongol, place. Just in a very old place where you don't have all of these rules and stuff, and one guy just starts doing crazy stuff like that, right? And there becomes a point where you do something so brutal that everyone is just got to be terrified and afraid to point something out, because then you'll be afraid that he'll be like, okay, boil that guy. And that's got to be terrifying. Like, wanting to speak up, but at the same time knowing if you speak up, you might be the next one thrown in the pot. Very scary.
Handed an unexpected build. In 1195, a 33-year-old Temujin would be handed an unexpected opportunity in the form of a foreign raid. A group called the Jurchid approached Ung Khan asking him to raise an army and attack their enemies, the Tartars. For this raid, Ung Khan enlisted Temujin's horde. Now, Temujin had much to gain from this venture, so he gathered support of his own. He approached a small...
It's hilarious with his... This guy's animations with no arms. Okay,
had much to gain from this venture, so he gathered support of his own. He approached a small clan directly to the south of his camp, the Jurchen, and offered them spoils and glory in exchange for participating in the raid. The Jurchen gave their word. They were in. Shortly before the raid, Temujin invited the Jurchen to a feast. Unfortunately, during the celebration, Temujin's half-brother Belgate spotted two Jurchen attempting to steal horses. He identified one of the thieves as a renowned wrestler named Buri, and readied himself to fight the man as an equal, thinking that they would wrestle honorably. Instead, Buri drew his sword and cut Belgate across the shoulder, a grave insult. When the rest of the feast heard about this, it turned into a drunken brawl. And by brawl, I mostly mean food fight, because in keeping with tradition, everybody had left their weapons behind. Needless to say, when the time came to set out on a raid against the Tartars, the Jurchen never showed up to help. As with the Kurultai, absence constituted a vote of no confidence in Temujin. Victory was swift and easy all the same, and the spoils were astounding. The Tartars had access to manufactured goods from the Chinese Empire, including silk clothes and blankets and gold and silver jewelry. Captured children wore luxuries the likes of which the ragged Mongols had never seen on anyone, let alone a child. The opulence was astounding. But more importantly, Temujin saw clearly how the powerful Jurchid had just used one border tribe to fight another, and the lesson was clear. A tribe conquered today will rise up and have to be defeated again in an endless cycle of warfare with no decisive victory or lasting peace. Temujin will remember this. With his newfound wealth, Temujin was now prepared to push into the territories of smaller neighbors.
For a second, I thought the episode was already over.
Tribes. When he returned home to discover that the Jurchen had raided his camp while he was away, picking his first target became very easy. Now that he was an experienced, battle-tested commander, Temujin and his mounted archers scattered the Jurchen with ease.
So, whenever you think of the Mongols and China, right, it's just kind of one of those things you learn about. It's like the Mongols fight the Chinese, or one of the things you just know. And so he's going to, who's in charge of China at this point? And he's going to, like, defeat, obviously, someone and then bring all the Mongols together and then fight in China. I'm going to find this out. I just want to tell you what I'm thinking.
Victory in hand, Temujin instituted another revolutionary change in ruling style. See, in the traditional cycle of Mongol raiding and counterattack, the defeated tribe was looted and a few key prisoners were taken, but the rest of the tribe was left alone. Historically, those survivors would then regroup and strike back, or seek out larger rival clans to join. Temujin decided that this cycle was not in his best interests. After defeating the Jurchen, he summoned a Kurultai of all his followers and conducted a public trial of the aristocratic Jurchen leaders. For failing to fulfill their promise of joining him in war, and for raiding his camp in his absence, they were found guilty, and Temujin had them executed. After this, he went on.
I'm surprised that rather than just continuing that cycle, they didn't learn from that and then just killed the entire village. You know, like when they would raid and then they'd take some and then who they left behind would rise up and take revenge. I'm surprised they didn't learn, like, okay, just kill everyone then.
On to occupy the Jurchen lands and redistribute them amongst his followers. He then integrated the remaining Jurchen citizens into the households of his own clan, not as slaves, but as full members in good standing. He also adopted an orphaned Jurchen boy as his brother, giving him to his mother, Olun, to raise as her own son. Then, as a final show of force, Temujin summoned all of his followers, including the newly adopted Jurchen, to a feast. For the event, he also summoned Buri, the wrestler who had started that great brawl by stealing horses and cutting Belgate. Temujin ordered the two men to wrestle. Buri had never lost a match in his life, but he feared Temujin's wrath and allowed Belgate to throw him. Normally, this would mean that the match was over, but Belgate and Temujin had made their own plans. After winning, Belgate set upon the defeated Buri and broke his back. With this final merciless display, Temujin had rid himself of all the Jurchen leaders.
I thought it was going to be like a nice, like, consolidation of differences. I thought that was going to end in Buri being like, welcomed in, okay. Oh, nope. Okay.
And sent a clear message to all who might oppose him. If you surrender to Temujin and remain loyal, there are great rewards to be gained. But if you betray him, there will be no mercy, and nobody, not even aristocrats, are safe. Temujin moved his base of operations into Jurchen territory, continuing to conquer and attract lesser lineages. Meanwhile, Jamaica worked to establish himself as a leader and advocate for the aristocrats.
I hope I'm not reading too much into stuff, but it seems like a lot of the leaders, like the great leaders I've learned about, Caesar, Hannibal, one of my favorites, Hannibal, Napoleon, Alexander the Great, they all have a sort of balance of mercilessness and, like, they're not too crazy, like boiling people, and they're not too nice, as if like they won't kill you. And there's always a good balance. And obviously you can see Temujin is, rather than everyone being terrified, or they still will be, but he takes them in, and I'm guessing will continue to build his population in the same way, just going tribe, defeating them, gaining power, going to the next one, gaining.
Who feared the threat Temujin posed to their traditions and way of life. Meanwhile, Jamaica worked to establish himself as a leader and advocate for the aristocrats, who feared the threat Temujin posed to their traditions and way of life. Then, in 1201, once he had the full support of the aristocracy, Jamaica made a play for the title of ruler of all Mongols. He summoned his own Kurultai and successfully bestowed upon himself the title of Gur Khan, an ancient and revered title which meant universal ruler. This was a strategic choice. Jamaica chose this title not just because it was ancient and respected, but also because the last person to bear the title was Ong Khan's uncle, who had ruled until Ong Khan revolted and killed him. Jamaica was not just challenging Temujin here, but Ong Khan as well. If he could win this war, he would be the supreme ruler of the Central Steppe. As Temujin's patron, Ong Khan came out personally to lead his warriors in the campaign against their rival. The battle was as much psychological as it was physical. Shamans lined the rocky cliffs along the battlefield, beating ritual drums to summon supporting spirits and control the weather. As they beat their drums, a massive thunderstorm gathered, which both sides attributed to the shamans supporting Temujin. This shook the resolve of many of Jamaica's warriors, and caused many to desert in fear of angering the spirits. Jamaica was forced to retreat. Ong Khan chased after Jamaica and the main part of his army, while Temujin gave chase to the Taichut, one of the clans loyal to Jamaica, and coincidentally the clan that had abandoned him and his family decades before. They proved difficult to defeat. Both sides fought for hours, firing from horseback, from fixed positions behind rocks, or hastily assembled barricades.
I thought the bows need to be more concurve, like they are, but like more so. They aren't.
From horseback, from fixed positions behind rocks, or hastily assembled barricades. Toward the end of the day, a poisoned enemy arrow struck Temujin Khan's neck, knocking him unconscious. Darkness fell, and both sides made camp on the battlefield to rest until daylight. Thanks to the aid of his loyal second-in-command, Temujin recovered by the next morning. The Taichut didn't even know that Temujin had been injured, and most of them had fled in the night. Temujin sent his warriors in pursuit, and, as with the Jurchen, publicly executed their leaders and integrated the rest, taking over their lands. He also found the family who had helped him escape 30 years prior, and freed them from their servitude. Temujin had won this fight, but Jamaica escaped Ong Khan and fled to more remote parts of the steppe to regroup and recruit new allies. Even without the Taichut, Jamaica still had many clans loyal to him. the final showdown was yet to come.
Let's do it!
The year is 1202, the dawn of a new century. Temujin Khan now rivals Jamaica in power. The future of the Mongols could fall to either of them. And Temujin, already a radical, is about to institute yet another set of revolutionary changes to a society that has hardly changed at all in 1,000 years. One year after the defeat of the Taichit, an aging Ong Khan sent Temujin on a new campaign to once again plunder the Tartars. Having now grown as a leader and a warrior, Temujin introduced new changes.
Patch notes. Looting has been reduced until after raiding. This will work to improve flow. Spoils are now redistributed to all participants by raid leader. Good. Mercy got nerfed again. Anna is best healer. Overwatch.
And tactics which would forever alter the way battle was done on the steppe. See, traditional Mongol raids had warriors rushing into camps while their victims either fled or stayed to defend their possessions. The fighting would then devolve into chaos as the raiders raced to loot and pillage, trying to grab the best prizes for themselves rather than chasing down enemy warriors. Temujin realized that these acts of personal greed got in the way of a more complete victory and left his troops vulnerable to counterattack from resentful enemies. This raid would be different. He declared that no looting would take place until total victory had been accomplished. Looting would then be done in an organized fashion, with all goods being brought to Temujin and then redistributed among his followers, using much the same system that mountain hunters used to distribute kills at the end of a group hunt. Temujin also ordered that a share of the wealth be allocated to anybody widowed or orphaned as a result of the raid. This ensured that what had happened to his mother when his father was killed would never again happen to another Mongol family. These changes guaranteed him the support of the poorest people in the tribe, and inspired loyalty among his soldiers, who now knew that their families would be cared for if they fell in battle. But these changes alienated some of his more well-off followers, as it denied them their traditional right to distribute prizes to their underlings as they saw fit. Still, it was a trade worth the making, as this move greatly centralized the power of his rule and incentivized loyalty. In enriching Temujin, his followers were also enriching themselves. This new system was a resounding success. For the second time, Temujin defeated the Tartars, and by postponing the looting until the end of the campaign, the army amassed more wealth than ever before. There was, however, a new problem. In keeping with their usual policy of executing leaders and integrating everybody else, they had now captured almost an entire army and all of the civilians. The old method had worked great when they were dealing with a clan of hundreds, but the Tartars numbered in the thousands. It was imperative to Temujin to end the vicious, constant conflicts between steppe lineages, and it seemed to him that integrating everyone under one unified banner was the only way to achieve this. But in order to bring the numerous Tartars into his Khanate, he would need the full support of his followers. He summoned a Kurultai to discuss a solution, and the one they found was vicious but effective. They summoned all of the Tartar men and ordered each one to walk by a cart. Every male taller than the linchpin, which held the wheels on the cart, was executed. Once the older and larger Tartar males were culled, the remaining men and their families were taken in as full members of his tribe.
What if it was a young kid who was just tall? So if you were 15 and you were shorter, you would live, but if you were 12 and just happened to be taller, you would be killed? I suppose I suppose like you couldn't go through everyone's birth certificates, so it's a more efficient way, I guess. Okay.
Tribe.
Right, I guess good job.
Adopted another Tartar orphan and took 2 aristocratic Tartar women as additional wives. That handled, Temujin had yet more ancient traditions to abolish. If he really
Did he have any kids? I'm joking.
Wanted to establish lasting peace among the steppe tribes, he would have to radically transform their military and tribal system. He would have to do away with the traditional system of kin groups altogether. He organized his warriors into squads of 10, who were then ordered to live and fight together. These groups were of mixed origin and lineage. By forcing people to serve as units rather than kin groups, Temujin managed to break their ancient lineages and ethnic identities. Each squad began with the oldest as their leader, but they could elect any man among them if they chose. 10 of these squads formed a company of 100 men, one of whom they elected to be their leader, and 10 of those companies formed a battalion of 1,000 individuals. The leader of each battalion was chosen by Temujin, further cementing his power. And under the new system, all members of the tribe, regardless of age or gender, had to perform public service for the benefit of the tribe, including caring for herds, gathering fuel, cooking, repairing weapons, or even performing music to entertain the troops. And just like that, there were no more lineages or classes. Everyone worked for the benefit of the tribe, and everyone reaped the rewards. Finally, Temujin created a closed territory designated as the homeland of the Mongols. For its location, he chose the sacred site where he had hidden from the Merkit raiders in his youth, and he closed it to all outsiders except the Mongol royal family, who would continue to bury their dead and conduct ritual gatherings there for the next 2 centuries. This land became the secret ritual center of the new Mongol identity.
Can I say something that's sort of off topic, but not really? I'm going to say it anyway. It's interesting how the success of a group of people does not depend on time necessarily, but on order. And so when you look at like the places where humans have been the most, the continent of Africa, you'd think that, you'd be able to, Africa would have the most time to produce grand civilizations to then conquer the places where people left over tens of thousands of years and then bring them under their rule. But it really, like, Africa being the oldest and therefore most diverse in diverse continent and so many tribal conflicts, and you learn about when borders were drawn in Africa, they were just kind of drawn haphazardly, and there were so many different ethnic groups and fighting groups of people that it just, when people are too divided, they look at more like they have to help themselves, obviously, and it's fascinating how it just takes one person sometimes to kind of put this to an end and end the cycle, and then bring order under a system of trust and fear of being executed in certain circumstances. And it's just fascinating how people work like that, I guess. Did that make sense?
After almost 20 years of work, Temujin now controlled most of the Mongols, but Jamaica was still a large and looming threat. Ong Khan was getting older, but it was not yet clear who would take over for him. So Temujin decided to force Ong Khan's hand, and proposed that his eldest son, Jochi, marry one of Ong Khan's daughters. This would be an acknowledgement of Temujin as his heir. Ong Khan's eldest son, who had no following of his own, was envious of Temujin's power and relationship with his father, and strongly encouraged Ong Khan to reject the proposal, despite the fact that doing so would be a grave insult. Ong Khan was swayed, and he rejected Temujin outright, and no following of his own, of Temujin as his heir. Ong Khan's eldest son, who had no following of his own, was envious of Temujin's power and relationship with his father, and strongly encouraged Ong Khan to reject the proposal, despite the fact that doing so would be a grave insult. Ong Khan was swayed, and he rejected Temujin outright. Fearing a military response, though, Ong Khan quickly devised a nefarious plot to rid himself of Temujin through trickery. He sent Temujin a message saying that he had changed his mind, setting a wedding date and inviting Temujin to come alone to celebrate with the family. So Temujin set out with a small band to see his patron, confident that he was about to secure his position to succeed Ong Khan as future ruler of the Central Steppes. Then, just 1 day's ride from Ong Khan's court, one of Temujin's allies rode up with terrible news. Ong Khan had an army nearby, preparing to wipe him out. Temujin was trapped. Wildly outnumbered, separated from his allies with the enemy at his heels, he could not afford to fight. He did the only thing he could do. He ordered his small group to scatter in all directions and fled. Temujin was devastated. This was supposed to be his moment of triumph. When he reunited with his followers far from Ong Khan's territory, he found that only a few remained. Some of his relatives had deserted in a panic. Others had simply gotten lost on the steppe. Now, what few remained faced starvation in their remote exile, and his newly united people were now without their leader. Temujin resolved to act quickly while Ong Khan basked in the glory of his victory. He sent messengers to his tens of thousands of followers, hoping that they would follow his order to assemble. And amazingly, they did. Imagine tens of thousands of people, separated from their leader but still converging, maintaining order and discipline. This was the effect of Temujin's new discipline, his new societal structure. This army thundered toward the unsuspecting Ong Khan, who feasted and celebrated in his palatial golden yurt. Loyal followers had gone so far as to leave fresh horses for Temujin's army along the way, so they could continue night and day without resting. In the middle of the night, and without warning, Temujin's army completely surrounded the enemy camp and crashed down on Ong Khan's court, days before he thought they'd arrive. Nobles fled in all directions, including Ong Khan and Jamukha, who managed to escape the fighting and flee to the nearby Naiman tribe, the greatest of the tribes not yet conquered by Temujin.
The heck is Jamukha doing there?
Jamukha made it safely across the Naiman border, but Ong Khan was stopped by a guard who couldn't believe that this haggard old man was the great Khan he claimed to be, and killed him. Temujin now turned his sights.
No, you're not. Stab.
Man was the great Khan he claimed to be, and killed him.
Jeez.
Temujin now turned his sights
You're just some old guy, Ted. Sorry.
to the Naiman, Jamukha's new ally, and killed him. Temujin now turned his sights to the Naiman, Jamukha's new ally. Now, at last, the decisive battle against Jamukha had finally come. For the first time, Temujin's new military organization would be put to the test in an all-out battle. Squads of 10 advanced silently in the pre-dawn darkness, so the enemy couldn't see how many people were attacking or from which direction. The squads would then attack and then immediately flee in different directions, making retaliation impossible. After hours of these harrying hit-and-run attacks, Temujin advanced with a long line of troops who fired their arrows and then melted back behind the next line, their replacements. The Naiman attempted to counter this by spreading out a long, thin line to meet the attacking.
It's like a version of the three-line shot, like the first shoots their muskets and then kneels down, and then the second row and then reloads and then
archers and avoid being flanked. In response, Temujin switched tactics yet again, rearranging his men into a narrow, deep configuration which allowed them to chisel through the thinned Naiman lines. Victory was swift and complete. Jamukha fled again and, in a poetic twist of fate, ended up hiding in the woods just as Temujin once had as a boy, himself now a disgraced, outcast bandit at the age of 40. In time, his followers found and delivered him to Temujin. Jamukha asked only for an honorable death, which Temujin granted. It was finally over. Temujin had won. At long last, he was to become the Khan of all Mongols.
Was Joe Costa the one boiling people? Not just Joe Costa. Okay. Breaking Bad? What's going on here? Alright, guys. I could do the next one. Hold on. 4, 5, 6, 7. No, there are 2 left. So I'll do those 2 as the next one. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you learned something or can teach me something. Let me know down in the comments. Join the Discord. Love to have you. See you guys next time. Bye.